All right, so here we are. All right, guys. So we're in northern France. We're at my mate Billy's lake.
Hello.
It's up in northern France. Two lakes actually. A top lake with Specimen Lake with some right big kippers. We netted it 2 years ago now.
2 years ago, yeah.
67 was the biggest we had then.
Yeah,
Big old
67 mirror, 66 common.
66 common, yeah, big old girls. And the bottom lake, which you would have seen when Billy received some of my fish from the fish farm just for Christmas. It wasn't one you had yesterday, was it?
What wasn't?
That wasn't one of my fish yesterday.
No.
So look, we're up here. I've literally Sunday afternoon just finished painting, so we're redoing the lodge, and Billy's out here on the ground, so he's been in a machine doing a load of burning. So I thought it was a really good opportunity because on the way here for this, to help Billy out this time round, I stopped off at a potential client for myself for the fish farm to look at a potential venue for him, and it struck me that, if you're in the UK and you're looking to buy a lake over here in France, there are particular articles and stuff out there on the internet about buying places in France, but there are so many caveats, so many things you need to consider, and I thought it was a great opportunity, having gone to a lake for this potential client and found it absolutely chock-a-block with weed, potential problems left, right and centre, and the guy was about to drop 40,000 quid on it. So it's not something that you do lightly, and you want to make sure that the properties that you're going to go for are right for the job, and that everything's tickety-boo basically. So I thought it was a good opportunity to chat with Billy. He's been here since 2016.
2016 I bought this, yeah.
Yep, 2016, and completely and utterly gutted, redug, desilted, done just about everything you need to do on a lake. Billy did on this place. And your background's in fish farming.
Yeah, I started out fish farming about 2005-6.
Yeah.
Following a stint at Brooksby College studying fisheries management. Then went into fish farming on an ornamental farm based in Hamlet Hempstead. Was there a little while. Then came away from fisheries, went into the environmental sector, and then in 2016 brought this and started developing it.
Yeah, so look, Billy, we'll also chat about bait sometime this week if we get the chance, and we haven't had too many Grimbergen, and we're not too knackered. But I thought it's a great opportunity delving into the minds of two people that have bitten the bullet, gone through it, and faced all of the issues that you're going to face when you're getting a lake in France. We've probably faced them, mate.
You're going to face them, yeah.
Yeah, you're going to face them, right? So I thought it's a great opportunity to do it. So what I've done is I thought we'd just have a quick chat about both of our personal experiences in getting lakes here and the things that we've both had to overcome. And then what I've done is I've just sort of put 10 bullet points really, and then sort of delved into details. And they're all things that you need to consider before you're ever considering buying a lake here in France. So for you, Billy, when you came here and bought this place, what drew you to it in the first place, and did it already have its license? Was it already ready to go?
Yeah, so I think slightly different my scenario to perhaps a lot of people looking at lakes, and I wasn't actually actively looking for a lake at the time. I was quite lucky in that I had established networks of friends in France. I've been coming here since about 2006 on a regular basis. And I got a phone call one day.
You don't look that old, Billy.
No, I don't look that old, mate. Yeah. I can't go a beard like yours, so
no, old Uncle
man,
Albert.
You know?
Uncle Albert's
Exactly.
got it dialed,
yeah,
but
during the war I might have one.
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah.
Anyway, another story for another day. But yeah, I was quite lucky to have established networks of friends over here, and people that knew I sort of had half an eye out for a place if it came up. And I got a phone call one day to a local fish farmer had been sort of tipped off on this. And historically, this has been the only site for quite some distance that's held water and has had a spring on site. And people going back 150 years or so used to come down here when there was droughts and get the water and pail it up and take it away because it was the only place that held water. So that in itself obviously is a great sign if you're looking for a lake. Not all of them have it, but if you can find one with a water source, that's a massive tick in the box. That's liquid gold as far as I'm concerned. So I got the phone call, came over to have a look at it. Be honest with you, it probably wouldn't have been something if I'd seen it advertised in the newspapers thinking I've got to have that. It was a wreck. Fortunately, It wasn't a lot of money, but there's been a lot spent on it since.
Yeah.
the reality of it was a duck shooting property for a reasonably well off sort of French family. They built a sort of a tin shed, if you like, that had been the inside, had been done out into a bit of a party room, which is now the lodge. And the lakes had just been left fallow, purely for duck hunting. No other purpose. There'd been no maintenance, other than cutting trees so they can get to the ducks and that sort of thing. So when I took it on, both lakes were absolutely silted up to high heaven. 6 foot of silt in the deep end of both lakes, and a major sort of construction job. But it was just the property made me buy it. Yeah. To be honest with you,
it's beautifully quiet out here, and it's like Fensmere. It's out there.
It's properly middle of nowhere, and I'm quite lucky in the UK where I live. It's fairly quiet where I live over there. But here it is next level. You can hear a pin drop at night, and to get something in this location, with the springs, with the picturesque views, for the right money.
And it was able to be used as a fishery.
Yeah, I mean both these lakes. That was, again, this is part of when I was lucky having pre-established networks of people that have been in this game for a long while. It's something I'd advise anybody looking for a lake, if you're going to go down the closed water route, which has been my advice to do, which we'll touch on.
We'll talk about that
a bit later on. But the DDT, which is the regulator essentially for managing lakes in France, part of the agreement before I agreed to buy it was that the DDT came round and signed these 2 bodies of water off as closed waters, which then escapes me from a whole heap of regulations, again, which we'll go on to chat about.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for the fact they were pre-signed off closed waters and I didn't have the same stipulations as an open water, I probably wouldn't have bothered, because there's a whole heap of work that comes with that, which would have been near on impossible to achieve. And
we'll talk about them with relation to Fensmere, because we've had some of those.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah.
Still in the throes of those problems.
Still doing them. Yeah,
Exactly.
Still doing them. So yeah. So what sort of time frame? I mean, obviously we all arrived here and tried to set up just about the time of COVID. So that sort of kibosh just bent us over and done us.
Yeah.
But it did allow us to bring our fish on to incredible sizes without pressure, which was a bit of a Brucey bonus. But again, it's something we'll touch on later on. That was 2 to 3 years of not being able to earn any income out of somewhere, and if you haven't got the funds to be able to do that, then you're down the Swanee before you've even started.
Yeah, and you do see that scenario, unfortunately, occasionally. People don't really realise what they're biting off with these things.
Yeah.
And the project and the dream, unfortunately, never realises, because they swallow money, and inevitably this for me was supposed to be an 18-month project when I took it on. You get contractors working to their own timescales, which you've got no control over, and you're not the most important thing in the world, unfortunately, to 2 people, so they've got their own other projects to run. It's why I ended up buying the machines and doing a lot of the groundwork myself here. You get problems along the way. This was an 18-month project that really was supposed to start in 2016 and be 18 months to 2 years, which took me nigh on 5 years to get it to the point where it was actually, a viable lake. There's just so many unforeseen things that crop up and bite you in the arse, to be quite honest.
And that's the thing. Okay, so these are all things we're going to chat and talk about as we go down through this list, because obviously everyone starts on a project, and you might need to turn something over and get earning money within a year. We can talk about visas and stuff for coming to Europe now. Now we're not the UK isn't part of the EU. You set up a micro enterprise, or you set up a business SAL or something here, which again we'll talk about. You've got to be earning money. So the reality of it is you've got to turn something into a profitable business straight away. So that means that the lakes have to conform to the regulations, or the red tape over here will absolutely kibosh you, and you're in a whole world of hurt. And unless you're an incredibly stubborn bugger, like probably me and Billy, because we're both similar, then you're just gonna give up. You're just gonna give up and lose a load of money and go, and then your dream's been shattered, and it's all because of not choosing the right place at the right time. So look, what I'll do is I'll interject my experiences, I think, as we go through and talk about these sort of major considerations that we're gonna go through. So first one, budget and hidden costs. So I mean, that goes into a lot of different things. It's the initial purchase price versus the ongoing costs, right? So purchase prices of property in France is the carrot that dangles to the UK buyers, because you look at somewhere and go, oh my God, there is no way on earth I could buy something like that in the UK for that money.
Don't compare. No.
But there is no comparison, right? But the reality is that cost, that purchase price, is such a small fraction of what then it costs to keep that place going and the ongoing cost of it. So, you know, for instance, I know with our property, we've put in as much as the property cost.
Yeah, it's the same with here, and some, to be honest.
Yeah.
And it's silly things, you know. Don't come over here thinking that something's going to cost you the same as it'll cost in the UK. And there's no rhyme or reason sometimes in France to what costs a shed load of money, and what's invariably for nothing. You know, there's a ditch, for example, that runs the entire way down the side of my property now, which is a metre deep and about 300 metres long. Because the first year I was here, a shed load of rain came down off the side of the farmer's field. You never would have thought he'd ever done it, and it flooded the lake. And you think, well, you can't have a farmer growing crops on one side, spreading cow milk and whatever else in the field, and feeding straight into the lake. So
why is that, Billy? Because it puts a load of ammonia in your lake, doesn't it? And kills all your fish.
Correct.
Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah, exactly. As we found out in 2018.
Yeah.
You know, so it's things like that you can't foresee, and every property's different. Every property's got its own quirk. But I ended up digging that trench down there, and it probably had 10 grand's worth of rock put in it.
Yeah.
And a pipe down to the stream to divert it around the property. You never would have known that. You come and look at this place in the summer, and you would never think, looking at the lay of the land, that that's ever going to happen. Of course, you get a biblical storm, and then you see what nature can do.
Well, I'm facing it at the fish farm, aren't I?
Yeah, exactly,
Everyone's watched the same videos. They've watched, you know, that diversion stream was put in by people however many years ago to cater for whatever
the environment at the time.
Yeah,
exactly.
And it isn't that anymore because it's flooding,
no,
and we have to deal with it.
Every year it gets worse.
Yeah, and we have to deal with it.
Yeah.
So the initial purchase price is just a small part of the piece of the puzzle, because the ongoing costs, and I think the ongoing costs, it's very worth speaking to someone like ourselves, really, that have experience and knowledge in these things, because we've been there, done it, and got the t-shirt. We can look at a property and you can automatically see things that most people can't. There's nobody out there doing it.
No.
That's offering advice. I did it because I'm a fish farmer, and if I'm going to supply fish to someone, I thought it was just decent courtesy to go and have a look at the lake that they're going to be stocked into. And it was not the one. It would have been a shocker, an absolute shocker. The guy would never have been able to fish the place without blue dyeing the lake or doing other things to manage that weed problem. And there are much better ways to spend 40 grand than on that particular property.
Yeah, 100%.
So the ongoing cost is something which I think most English people that are buying in France cannot ever comprehend, the ongoing cost, because that then comes into taxes, legal fees, notary fees, you know.
Even just the agent's fees over in France, you know, the buyer pays the agent's fees, not like the UK where the seller will instruct an agent to sell a property and the commission gets taken out of the sale value. That's an additional cost a lot of the time.
Yep.
Against the property. So just getting it over the line with the costs, they're significant, and they shouldn't be, you know, compared to sort of UK costs. And whatever you buy, unless you get really lucky and you buy something that's turnkey, that somebody's done a fantastic job on, that's ready to go and fit for purpose for the next X amount of years, the reality is you're going to have to spend money, whatever you buy, particularly if you're starting from scratch.
That comes to a different point. Some people want to create their own thing. Some people just want to buy a business that's already established.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
if you're buying something that's already established, you really need to understand the license and how long that license has to go, and then understand what the rules and regulations now are, because a lake that was licensed 30 years ago that's going to run out next year, the laws for it to become a licensed lake 30 years ago are very different to what they are now. So therefore you buy that lake, and then a year later they turn up to tell you that your lake is no longer a closed lake. It's no longer available to be a fishing lake because you need a silt trap, you need a diversion. I know, because this is what I'm facing, right? So you know, it'll be 100 grand we put in basically into making our lake
Get it
up to standard.
Exactly, yeah.
get it to standard, it'll be 100 grand with the buying machine.
And it's having the knowledge to ask the right questions at the right time, because often you see lakes that are cheap and you think that was good value, might have a go at that. The reality is the person's getting out of that lake because there is a monstrosity of a job that's about to come up, which the DDT,
leaky dam or something.
Yeah, or just a diversion channel. I mean, you know from your place, you know, a lot of the ideas that come out of the authorities over here, they look good on paper, but the practicality of doing them is quite different. And when I came over to help you and look at your diversion channel, before you'd already told the DDT it wasn't practical, they wanted to put it down aside the lake where there's a 20 or 30 metre high hill around it. You've got to dig out 10,000 tonnes, 20,000 tonnes of soil and sheep pile the whole bloody thing.
Pile it, which would have cost millions. Well, literally would have cost. It wasn't doable. It's only because I have an understanding of it that you go no. Because if you commit to that with the DDT, it's very difficult to then turn back on it, right? So, again, these things are really, really, really important. But the taxes, legal fees, notary costs, agents' fees, they all have to be included into what you're considering when you're buying what seems like a cheap lake. So you get a lake, you see it, it's 3 or 4 acres, you're getting it for 50 or 60 grand, and it looks like, oh my God, it's an absolute steal because you can get it, you can pay. We talk about, you know, stocking costs and stuff like that. Blimey, you can turn that into a 20 grand income in no time at all. Bob's your uncle. Yeah. The reality is it costs you 60 grand. It's going to cost you another 60 to 80 to actually get it to that point. Yeah. And these are considerations, because if you haven't got that money on the outset, then you're already on a loser, and then you're selling a property which.
Yeah, if you're not careful, you can dig yourself in a hole that's very difficult to dig yourself out of, and you walk out of it. Yeah, probably not even getting your purchase price back, because you're then selling it in a desperate sort of state as a going concern.
Which talks about capital gains over here as well. That again, unlike the UK or Australia, where we've come back over from, there is very limited capital gain on property here, to a degree. I'd say if you've developed a carp fishery and it's an ongoing business, and you've got a clientele and you've got future bookings, then obviously that's going to enhance your capacity to sell the property for a greater value, especially if you haven't pushed the weeks that you're booking it out for, etc. But the reality of normal life in France is that if you put 10 or 100 or 200 grand into a property, you're lucky to actually lucky to get that money back out.
Yeah. However, the counter to that is there are certain rules now for capital gains, such as if you're having building work done, that building work has to be done by a registered artisan, and that registered artisan has provided an insurance certificate. And if you do the work yourself, you can't claim anything back against capital gains, so you can't offset your costs against the sale of property. You will pay gains on that amount if you haven't had somebody registered in France to do the work. So there are quirks that are very different to the British system. Don't just assume that because it's capital gains and I've spent the money that you're going to get that back. Yeah. You have to go through the right channels in order to achieve it.
So that probably leads into one of the most important things then, is if you're looking to buy a property, you need to get a proper solicitor, someone that understands French law, that speaks English, that can help you.
I think from the outset you do need to sort of buddy up with somebody reputable that can advise you the ins and outs, that can speak the lingo. Even if you are pretty good at French already, you need somebody that really understands it or can speak English to get into the detail. And also, don't just assume that when you're looking at properties, if you've looked at one in one department, one region, and there were certain rules and stipulations around, that's going to be the same, because every department has its own quirks. And for lots of different reasons, which are probably, too many of them to talk about today, but they're all different. You have to make sure that you've really looked into that individual lake in its individual merits and characteristics before making a judgment on what's doable and what's not.
And that'll come into another one which we're going to get onto in a minute. I mean, you then, before you've even started, then you've got to consider maintenance, stocking, insurance. And the stocking side of it will always come. We'll talk about this. It comes in one of these other levels, but the reality of it is you've got to assess an existing stock. You've got to know what that is. So I mean, I don't. if we were ever going to go to a lake, I advise all the people that I'm helping with stock. I'm not going to put stock into there unless you've actually netted the lake and you've established exactly what you have in that lake.
Yeah, you're creating a potential time bomb by doing that. And the reality is, it's the harsh truth, but unless you get really, really lucky, you're going to be scrapping those fish that are in the lake. If you're buying something from scratch and they've just been
most of the time, yeah.
At best, you're probably going to get 20-pound fish, which you think, great, I've got 20s, I'll grow them. They probably won't grow. You probably put a load of food into them for 2 years, they won't grow. You've kind of got to treat it, when you're buying something from ground zero, as exactly as that. You know, go in there with your eyes open to the fact that it's going to have to be drained. We're going to have to remove the stock. We're going to have to start again. You know, and you're going to have to spend some money. Otherwise, you quite quickly end up chasing your tail, and you've lost 2 years before you know it.
Yeah, and I suppose that leads to talking about. I mean, it's just going off into different tangents, but it just comes to mind is that, you know, you begin with the end in mind is always my overall strategy. And I bought Fensmere knowing that I didn't want to have more than 2 anglers on my lake, and I wanted to make it specifically a low stock big fish water, because I know dealing with lots of people is a lot more aggro, just through my world experience, than it is dealing with 2 guys. And if you target it as already being quite a difficult, harder water with big fish, then you're reducing that pool to people that are generally, you know, they're more carp focused rather than party focused, etc. So you're going to have more issues. You're not going to have as many issues. But again, a 5-acre lake is going to require a very different stocking to a 20-acre lake.
Correct.
You know, and if you're looking at a biomass of between sort of 400 to 600 kilo a hectare, maybe in a commercial fishery, you can work the math out on what you're going to need to buy in for stock for a bigger lake. So all of that has to come into them initial budget and costs, hidden costs.
And while you're on that sort of that theme as well, I think it's really important right from the outset, not to get too drawn into me as a carp angler. What's your client base going to be, and what do they want, and what you're going to define as your niche, if you like, as that fishery. Because you see so many fisheries over here, I think, that are sort of neither here nor there. They're not a big fish water, they're not a runs water, they're not particularly anything notable, and the market is so busy now. It's liquidated beyond belief. I think we say 300, we think more than 300 English-owned lakes. And it's not to say there isn't opportunity, because there's massive opportunity, but you need to define who you're going to be and what you're going to target and who you're going to target, and the people are there to come and fish the lakes. But it's really important from the outset to understand what sort of lake you're going to be, and will the lake hold the capacity to be that sort of lake that you want to be.
Yes, that's right.
Now, that lake up there just behind you, that's a low stock big fish water, and it always has been. It was always the plan for it. This lake down here is more of it's not a runs water, but it's more of an action water, and it could hold 5 times as many fish as the top lake. If I decided to do that the other way around, that would blow up in 10 minutes. It just can't hold them. They grow really well in there, but it doesn't have the same spring feed as the bottom lake, and it doesn't have the same characteristics. Therefore, you have to understand what is it I'm trying to achieve, and can that lake actually do what I want it to do?
Which is that begin with the end in mind. Set your stall out, assess the market, assess what you want from your lake, and target it. I mean, look, we opened Fensmere last year. We're fully booked into 2027. We haven't really opened the books for 27, but because I saw there was a need for somewhere which was a little bit different from everyone else produces runs waters here, really. But that you don't need to go out of the UK now, really.
No, that's right.
You can get 40s and 50s in the UK quite regularly now, and you don't have to spend all the money on the tunnel and your tolls and your petrol.
Yeah,
so
don't tell everyone what.
No, but it's mad, isn't it? So the other side there into this budget and hidden costs is obviously cost bailiffs or staff, or are you going to be on site? Are you going to move here? And again, if you move here, you've got to move here now on a visa which will enable you to earn a living. You can't just move here and go like, I came here having lived in Australia. We came here just before the Brexit date, so we got in with grandfather rights of being an EU citizen. But but we established. I've still got a business in Australia, and I still run that, and that was really the precursor for everything. And we set up the Jeep very quickly. But you've got to set it up. So if you're taking over a business, quite an easy one to do. If you're taking over an established business, you'd need to chat with, again, a solicitor, someone that understands French law, can apply for, hand-holding companies that we used originally. That'll help you deal with all of those, all of the French nuances, and get you set up and get you over here. But it's a process. It's a process you've got to be so sure you want to do, because it's a ball ache beyond all belief.
Yeah.
More than any other country you've ever known, and there's the language barrier.
Yeah, and I think that's what I was going to touch on with the language thing. I think pre-Brexit, it was far easier to come over and sort of live in an expat bubble, if you like, and never really have to speak the lingo. If you come over now, you have to prove a sort of a basic level of understanding of French language and culture and that type of thing. And if you haven't got that, it's not a no-go, it's not a non-start, but the French will make you start to mandatory. I think it's 200 hours, of mandatory French lessons. It's not a showstopper, it's not the end of the world. If you come in here, you probably want to be able to integrate and chat to the French, because there's some great people to meet over here. But it's just another thing just to have in your mind that there's a process, and it's not just about the lake. You've got some stones to cross before you get to that position where you're actually here and you've got the lake.
Yeah, so if you've sold it to your missus and you haven't gone through that, it could be issues.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So we go straight into location and accessibility. So again, for you, Billy, you're northern France. You chose this again, maybe specifically because of its proximity to ports
100%,
and ease to get to.
100%. I chose the west because the east is there's a lot more liquidated business in the excuse the phrase, we're talking about water, but there's a lot of fisheries, and sort of within the magic 2 hours of Calais is for a lot of lakes what they're looking for. When you go a bit further east into the Champagne, you do have problems at times with fish thefts and that sort of thing. If you come to the west of France, in the north, you don't get any crime, particularly not that I've been exposed to. And fish thefts are unheard of. So that was important to me, being an absent owner. Albeit I've got people looking after the place, that I know that the stock and the property is going to be secure when I'm not around. But also there's the consideration of the travel. I think the further south you go, the more you've kind of got to offer. And although we offer a hell of a lot here, for a sort of small water, big fish venue, the facilities and what have you are above and beyond perhaps what other people are offering.
It's immaculate, mate.
I think the harder your job becomes, the more money you've got to spend. You might be able to get a cheaper property a bit further south, but you've got to offer more. So you either got to have big fish from day one, or you've got to have some really stunning accommodation, which still offers good fishing. No good one without the other, but you've got to be able to carve that niche out a lot quicker the further you go, because you've got to remember people are travelling down from the ports, they're driving past tons of fisheries on the way down south, and unless you can define who you are and why people are going to come to you over stopping at one of those ones on the way down en route, it just makes your life a lot easier.
No, totally agree. It's the reason we when we came over from Oz, we looked in that middle region of France in the Creuse. We thought that 6 hours was probably the limit of what people will drive. I know, because when I used to fly from Oz to come over and fish with me old BCSG boys and come down for holiday, we knew that was, we wouldn't want to go any further. But there's also Limoges Airport, which makes it very quick and easy. Not that I think most anglers want to come over and borrow gear or use other borrowed gear. It is a possibility, and it's 50 minutes from our place. But getting the proximity to airports, ferries, and etc. is super, super important. And I know I went to a venue to drop some fish off the other day with Sally from our top pond, and God, the route into it was just a ball ache. It was just savage. And I think to mine is 3 roads from Paris. It's 3 roads from Paris,
straight, isn't it? Yeah.
So you go, well, that is a much easier scenario for anyone driving. You're literally bump, 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 and you're there. You haven't got this massive twisty turny roads.
It's definitely something you have to take into big consideration, because you might find the absolute perfect property in your mind, but if nobody wants to go and experience it and find out how great it is, you're kind of on the back foot from the off. which then sort of devalues your offering in terms of what you can rent that place out for, because you've got to sell the idea of people actually getting to it.
Yeah.
So yeah, location is hugely
Location. It's the same in everything, I think,
Yeah.
with anything with property and that, isn't it? So that really goes to ease of access for guests. We've talked about climate, how it affects fishing year round. I mean, obviously, the further south you go, potentially the warmer. Up in the cruise, we're at 500 vertical metres above sea level. Another conversation I'm going to have to talk about at some stage.
Going with that,
yeah, which is barometric pressure and effects on fish, which we haven't even. I'll talk about later, because it's something which is twisting my melon. And nearby amenities, shops, etc. But it's nice if anglers come, they want to be able to shoot down, get shops and provisions.
Yeah.
You know, if you're in so far away from anywhere, then realistically you've got to try and provide for that. Because, you know, someone's not going to want to drive half an hour, 3/4 of an hour to get to a shop. You need something relatively close. So all of these things are considerations in that when you're dealing with location accessibility. Next up, we're going to talk about lake size, depth and water quality. So first up on my list here, it says, you know, it talks about closed lake, pre-Napoleonic Cassini lake. So this is probably one of the most important, because, again, there are multiple lakes out here in France that can be bought very cheaply, but they don't conform. And the DDT will not allow you to have anglers there. Now, you might get away with running it. You might get away with setting it up and running it to an English clientele for years before you get kiboshed. But when you do, you're going to be in real trouble, because the environmental police, the DDT, they don't just... The DDT don't just turn up. They turn up with two guys with guns. Yeah. They're full on. Yeah. You sit there going, oh shit.
Yeah. And I don't know what it's like in every department, but I know certainly in our department at the moment, I was told a few weeks ago, actually, there's so many 100 lakes in our department, I'm led to believe, that have been advised by the DDT that they need to do work to bring those lakes up to regulation standard. The works haven't been done, and now they're at the point with a lot of them that they're just going to tell you got to fill them in.
Yes, that's what. Yeah.
And you know, unfortunately, there are people that have bought lakes thinking they've brought one thing. You know, have put their everything into it. You know, life savings into it. Now told they've got a lake that isn't conforming. It's a long-standing dispute. They've been told to get it conforming, and now they're left with the problem of trying to get it up to scratch and up and running. So it is, you know, not to be the monger of doom, I suppose, on the subject, but it is something you can't stress enough to make sure you know what you're buying when you buy.
Well, look, we know. We came over. We initially from Australia put an offer in a lake below Limoges, which was a Cassini lake, a pre-Napoleonic lake. It was already. If it's pre-Napoleonic, the DDT have, it's one of these classic things in France. If it's pre-Napoleonic, they have no right to tell you what to do with the lake. It's basically you can do what you want with it. And we put the offer in, blah blah blah. It didn't work out. There was some exchange rate issues, and it just didn't work out. So we went for our second option, which I didn't want to do because it meant I knew I could see I had to do a massive amount of work. Where the first one looked like I could just turnkey really, or just jump in. It would have been cushy. Anyway, this particular lake, we were told and instructed by the owners and the notary that it had been pre a fish farm, and it had a 30-year license that had just run out, and everything would be fine. What we didn't realise was that just below our lake was a rare pearl mussel, and so it was like an SSI site. And this rare pearl mussel used to supply pearls to the royal family in France. So it was something which they were on. And there was no way anything was... So we had everybody. We had a whole meeting. We had the whole DDT office, the big cheeses, the police there, the full Monty to do the walk round. And look, we managed to be able to negotiate with an interpreter. We hired an interpreter for the day to be with us. And from, you know, through our pleading and our willingness to say, well, look, what you're seeing going on around you with what we're doing with the property, we'll get this done. Now, and this involved everything that we've talked about. It involves, and everything you've seen on the videos, it involved the development of a huge silt trap. I've got to still do the diversion channel. It's just been too wet in this last year to actually start the works. But once that's done, then it's another 30-year licence. And good on the DDT, they backed us. The main guy backed us, which was good, because he knew we'd put everything into it, and it was, you know, it was just good humanity, if you know what I mean. He wasn't just the university waller that was sticking by what he was taught. He could see that everything had been put into this, and we were going to do the job, and that will be done. But bear in mind, that is such an essential component. If you can get pre-Napoleonic Cassini or a dug pit, like a gravel pit, then you haven't got to deal with a lot of those issues.
No, I think anything with an open water status, you're always going to have more challenges with, because there's a lot more regulation around them. When we talk about open and closed water, we're talking about whether a lake is permanently connected to a water course. So you've got a stream or a river that runs through the lake and feeds the lake on a permanent basis. A closed lake will be its own independent body of water. You may have a stream close by, and I think last I heard of the regs in this area, it was about 6 metres gap you've got to have between the stream and the lake to classify that as not connected to the water source.
It's a closed lake. Yeah.
If you want a less complicated life, look for a closed lake. Would be my advice. Not to say that there aren't some great buys to have with the open waters, but just be aware that you've got the licensing needs, and if the work isn't done up, I think they want a 100-metre spillway now, most of them, to cope with a 100-year flood. They want a diversion channel that can come around the lake. They want a silt trap, so no silt's coming out of the lake and into a water body.
Proper functioning monk system generally.
Just be aware, and if you just take a closed water on and you stock it with fish, also be aware those fish might not belong to you even though you put them in there. Because if that lake's connected permanently to a water body that's publicly owned, well, the DDT might claim to them fish and say that you don't own those fish. So just be aware what you're getting into. Not to put anybody off, there are some great opportunities with them, but you do need to get into the system and understand exactly what's being asked of you, and don't think you can just turn a blind eye and not do it, because they will make your life difficult if you don't.
Oh yeah, look, they certainly will. And look, if you're like us, we're on a Cat 1 trout stream, so you are not allowed to have pike, perch, any predatory fish in your lake, which is a management issue for your water. If your fish are breeding, that's a problem. They generally want you to be netting draining 2 to 3 times, or once every 2 to 3 years. Is a normal requirement of the DDT, and that's to make sure that build up of silt is not too great, and that can be sieved off, so it's not going downstream. All of these things need to be sorted, and so some of the best lakes, like Fensmere and the fish farm, are river fed, spring fed. They're just the water is just ridiculously good. It's just so good, it is ridiculous, and there's such an abundance of it where I live, that it's phenomenal. But you've got to be able to know when you start into it that you've got the capacity to make it legal if it isn't already, and if it is already, know what time frame that license is and what needs to be done once that license expires. Because that's the big one. You get into it, you've got 5 years left, you're fantastic, but it's your retirement one. And then 5 years' time comes, they come down on you like a ton of bricks, and it's $100,000 to fix the problems that the lake isn't now complying to. So and I suppose closed water stuff is also, can talk about aeration and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, that's the other consideration. You've got a big benefit in that if you've got you could argue the other way, that you've got water coming in from an unknown source sometimes. It's very clean down your neck of the woods, but whatever comes down that river, you might not know what's coming down.
No, it could come, farmer could have just spread a load of shit.
It could be anything, any random occurrence, it could bite you really in the arse. But the flip side to it is, if you've got a closed water with no feed, you're going to have to aerate if you get any sort of number of fish in there. Obviously, the more fish you put in, the greater demand on oxygen, the more aeration you have to provide. There are a lot of lakes that don't have a feed of water. Particularly in this area, a lot of them are clay lakes, which are a bit different to these, because these are spring-fed, quite deep lakes. But if you, so you put me right.
No, go on, keep going. I'm just checking, making sure. I was going to stop it in a minute, and then we can have a breather.
Yeah, I thought he'd left me with the camera and walked off.
Just stop it for a breather. Go on, keep going.
But yeah, so there are a lot of lakes in this region that are quite shallow. They're clay dug lakes, which is quite typical of this area. And people manage them. You can still use them as fishing lakes, but you see the water level drop 2 feet in the summer, because the only feed of water those particular lakes are getting is through the rainwater in the ditches in the winter. And me personally, I'd be shitting myself all summer on the prospect that the lake's going to drop 2 feet and it's not particularly deep anyway.
I know of many waters that do it, many places that have it. Yeah, of course, many places have it.
It's something, it's overcomable, but it's need management.
Yeah.
They need management. I think if you give you any advice really for what would be on the ideal tick list for a lake, it's a closed water. Would be my preference, but it's something that's spring fed that has a flow of water through it. So you're not in the world of open water having to do diversion channels and spillways and that type of thing. But you still have the luxury of water passing through the lake and self-aeration to some degree.
Yeah. So I'll just, on this particular segment, because I'm going to split it into two, because I knew this would be lengthy. So I'll just do this next one, and then we'll stop on this point. I'll finish it, and then we'll go into the next lot. So the next one is stocking levels and carp strains. So we've broached upon it, but of course one of the first things you need to do, and I've said this to everyone that's contacted me regarding having fish for last winter, etc., because most of them are new guys. Have you netted your lake? Do you know what's in it? Again, we talked about it, but
Vital.
But you can't just go putting fish into a lake not knowing what's already in there, because if you want to get the best out of your lake, you have to understand its biomass. You have to understand what's in it, the amount of weight of carp or fish that are in that lake that then that lake can sustain. And then you need to take out any species really that are contrary to the carp and that are going to be eating your carp bait and being a problem to the carp, obviously producing urea and ammonia within the water quality and within the water, and manage that biomass. So it's, doing a netting, a drainage and a netting even before you buy it
100%
is vitally important. Now, how do you go about doing that before you buy it?
I think there's, to me, there's a step prior to that as well. And again, it depends what you're trying to get out of the lake. If you're looking for somewhere, this is somewhere you can perhaps bring your family and come a few times a year and fish, it's probably less important. But the silt and the actual health of the lake would be the first thing I would look at before you even consider even putting a fish in it. Particularly if you wanted to grow fish and you wanted to be in a good environment and they're going to thrive and not cause you problems, and not have eutrophic waters, which is nutrient-rich water. You need to assess what's in there. If you've got silt in there that's essentially decayed organic matter that hasn't been processed, you've got to deal with that first. Secondary to that, as you alluded to, you've got to get in there and you've got to find what fish they are. It is absolutely senseless going and buying 100 fish, even though you're really excited to do so. You buy a lake, you want to put a carp in it, you want to get growing the fish, you want to get fishing. Yeah, totally get all that. But you're essentially creating yourself a potential time bomb by doing that. You might already have a shed load of roach or something in there, a shed load of wildy little carp that are stunted because they've not been
fed. Bream,
tench. Anything in there, anything that's consuming oxygen, you need to have an understanding of what it is that's in there that's consuming oxygen and producing waste. Before you go and spend 5, 10, 20, 50, 100 grand on carp, you've got to make sure that's your cattle shed. Before you put your cows in, you're going to clean it out and put fresh straw in. That's essentially the first stage of the job. There's no point putting, spending good money after bad. You might have a load of crap in the lake and you're going to go and put a lot of expensive carp straight in the lake. I
suppose that's something we've talked about before, is the difference between farming with or looking after carp as opposed to looking after cattle and what have you. Is you look after the animal when you're the farmer. With fish farming, and you look after the environment. You have to manage the environment. The fish will do the rest. Exactly. They're hardy creatures, aren't they? But you've got to give them. You've got to make sure that the environment they're living in is healthy and good.
Exactly.
So that's a vital importance right before the start. So understanding what's in the lake that you're buying, and not just what you're being told. Remember, because what you're being told, someone's trying to sell their property. So
they've all got 20 kilo carp.
Yeah. Everything's got 20 kilo carp in. Yeah, and they're all growing really quickly. Yeah. So that needs assessing. And look, I've been lucky in that I've been able to pre-fish some of the lakes the lakes I bought. I've been able to pre-fish them. I can suss them out. I can see what the fish stock is, and I'm 42 years being a carp fisherman. I know I don't look that old, but I do at the moment. I'm knackered. He's been cracking the whip on me. I've been on the old roller.
You're say only 42 years.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah. So I was able to pre-fish it and understand the stocking, and so I knew what was in my lakes already before I bought them, which made it much easier for me then to go ahead with doing it. But again, most people don't have that that ability.
No.
You don't have that ability. So the reality is you've got to go to that default. You've got to just net it, drain it, net it, get the lot out, suss it out.
Absolute start position to go from. Once you've established that absolute position, then you know what you're working with.
Then you can work with it. Yeah. So then from there we're going to look at. I mean, I think one of the most. That goes hand in hand with that is getting in touch with a reputable fish farmer. But it is, isn't it? I mean, okay, we've both had so many issues.
I think this is something that you know. This isn't because I'm mates with fans and
we've got we have to be careful with what we say. But
trying to flog his fish, and I'm not gonna publicly name and shame fish farmers in France because that would be incredibly unfair of me to do when they're not here. But the same as everywhere, I suppose. You're the new kid on the block. You're a fresh face. You're from out of town. People will try and take advantage of you, and there are some flipping good fish farmers in France.
Yeah, there are
some excellent fish farmers in France.
There are some
for
good ones.
For every good one, there are equally as many bad ones.
Like there is in the UK, I suppose, as well.
Yeah, unless you know, and unless you've got somebody that you know has got a good reputation and is honest and stand up, just be careful because I think most lake owners that come to France at some stage have had the fingers burnt.
Well, you've been burnt. You're still burnt. You're in the hole for a couple of grand for someone that hasn't delivered fish that you'd ordered and put a deposit in.
Deposit down, and then got a story that they couldn't net the lake because there was too much water coming in. So can I keep hold of the fish for a year and
you ain't you ain't green. You're not just off the boat, mate.
No. It's been 9 years. I've had this now, and nearly 20 years I've been coming over. And I know other fish farmers. It's not just you that I'm sort of friendly with, but you get sold a good story sometimes by people, don't you? At the time I wanted a few fish, and there wasn't a huge amount of money tied up, fortunately. You take people at face value, don't they? And then sometimes in life face value didn't count for a lot. But
I've had a whole delivery die on me.
Yeah.
And take some of my originals. Yeah. A whole delivery of fish. Yeah. I was told it was nothing to do with them. It was to do with water coming off the land.
Yeah, it happens. People will tell you. Yeah. Anything to get out of it, and if you're pretty new to it, you'll swallow it as well. Whereas I think now, if somebody told you something,
I knew it wasn't then. I knew it wasn't then. No. I knew it wasn't then. I had control fish in the lake. I knew that if there was anything was going to die, it would be them. Yeah. But it's the reality of it. So it's a really tough one. I'm not gonna. This isn't an advert for Fensmere Fish Farm because I only have a small amount of fish, and to be honest, all of my fish are sold for this coming year. So I have no financial interest in it. No, but you have to be. That I've just put. There's 2 fish farmers I deal with that I've just put big business their way. Yeah. Because I know they're honest, and I've just put clients that have come to me that I can't supply fish to, and I've put them to those guys because I know that they're bona fide, good quality, good honest fish farmers. Yeah. And I've dealt with them, and I deal with them, and they're bona fide, honest, straight up and down people. But be very careful because there's a lot of charlatans out there. There's a lot of people that take your deposits. They won't give you your money back. Yeah. They'll deliver you fish that have just come out of a plan d'eau that they've just netted down the road, that's been fished for the last 20 years, and the fish come to you with loads of damage. And the problem is when you're new to it and you're excited, you don't pick up on that. You're just excited for the delivery of your new fish, and you don't say anything about it. Those fish should go straight back. You don't want them in your lake. You're paying for top quality fish that have been bred and brought up, and they're out. You know their history. They're the fish you want, and so that's a really big thing for me.
Yeah, it's huge.
It's
huge.
you know,
As
on
I
top
say,
of buying the
it's
water, it's probably your
yeah.
next one of your next biggest expenses.
Yeah, and I don't know
Yeah.
many people, to be honest with you, that haven't had their fingers burnt in some way buying fish when they're first starting out in France. And that unfortunately is the reality of it. So, you know, as much research as you do buying your lake, establish some good contacts within the aquaculture or pisciculture trade in France, whether that's fens, whether that's other people that we can recommend, or somebody else you know has got a lake that he's used them for stocking before. Make sure you get somebody good. You know, they're a big investment, and they're a living swimming asset. You know, they're only going to live and swim if they're the right fish in the first place. You know, so make sure you spend your money wisely, I think, is the message there.
Well, that's the key. Is, as I just said, I can only supply X amount of fish per year at this moment. There is change going to hopefully occur with a few more lake acquisitions and the capacity to deal with more. But the reality of it is if you want to message us or chat with us about any of it, just please, you know, give us a message on the YouTube channel, or you can message me on the Facebook pages of Fensmere Fish Farm or Fensmere Carp Fishing Holidays. And I'll get back to you and put you onto people who I know will look after you, deal with you properly, and you'll get decent quality fish. So I think that's it for this one, because it's already going to be about an hour long, and we're only halfway through my bullet points. I'm only 3 deep in the Grimbergen as well.
Mate. Yeah, it's not like you.
Yeah, no, I've had a couple already.
I think that's the other thing as well, though. Obviously, we've glossed over a lot of topics here because it's very easy to jump from one thing to another, because there's a whole world of things when you start talking about lakes you could talk about for hours and hours. But if you want to get in touch with either of us separately, we live and breathe fishing, same as you guys do, probably watching this. And fish farming is a passion, and you know, been bait making now for 15 years. And
we'll talk about that.
Anything you want to chat on and a bit of advice, feel free to pick the phone up, drop us a message on Facebook. More than happy to sit and chew the fat for a few hours. Yeah,
perfect, brilliant. Well, look, we're going on to part 2. I'm going to do this in 2 parts, otherwise it'll just be too long, and I don't know if my iPhone battery will last that long. And we'll get into. I've got a few more points here, like facilities, infrastructure, marketing, and customer base, which we'll go into. You know, another good mate of ours, Wayne, who's exclusive carp venues in France, and how, you know, good that is. Predation, biosecurity, legal structure and business model, and exit strategy and resale value. Things that I think, again, when you begin with the end in mind, you tend not to bugger up the bits in between. So you've got an idea of what you want to achieve and what you want to get at the end of it, and then you put all the pieces together to get there. So hopefully it'll be, you know, sitting here and listening to us waffle on will be of value to you. It's a lot of years of experience and a lot of money and work and graft
and sweat
and graft and tears have gone into developing what we both have.
Exactly, yeah.
So, you know, I think it is of value, and there's some written stuff out there, but I don't think there's anything out here on a sort of a vlog type stuff. So hopefully it'll be of value to people that are considering this journey, which I know there are a few. Hopefully it'll be of value to people that would love to think about maybe making this, you know, their passion and their future. So anyway, I'm going to go around and turn the bloody thing off, and we'll catch you later. We are actually fishing at night, so I haven't caught bugger all, but Billy's had a good couple.
Fishing,
whatever.